A tenant who was an absolute nightmare to her landlord was shocked and surprised when the landlord didn't want to renew her lease. Now she's calling it an informal eviction. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have quite the interesting article for you today. But before I get into that article, I want to thank all of my subscribers. Okay, I just hit 10,000 subscribers. It's a big deal to me. Okay, and I'm very grateful to all of the people who watch my videos every single day. And, I just wanted to give a shout out. And I am planning that live stream that I promised. I promised that I would have a live stream when I hit 10,000 subscribers. Well, it is going to be coming up soon. Okay, I don't have a date set yet, but I do plan on doing it. Okay, so the article I'm covering today, it's a nightmare tenant story. Okay, and I love bringing these articles to light because you know what they do? They try to twist it and make it seem like the tenant is the victim when in fact they are the nightmare. Okay, they're the ones who are causing the problem. The landlord is the one who is going through all the trouble, and yet they try to play it off like, hey, this tenant is just this innocent victim. Well, unfortunately for the tenant, right, they put a few more details in the article, and I can read between the lines. Okay, this tenant was a nightmare, and when the landlord didn't renew, well, you got what you deserved. You got what you deserved, okay? And I don't feel sorry for you, and you need to just move along because if you and your landlord don't get along, why the heck would you want to stay there, okay? So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Let's say you have a tenant in one of your units, right? And you and that tenant don't get along. Would you renew the lease on that person, or would you choose not to renew the lease on that person? I'll let you know right now. If I don't get along with one of my tenants and they're paying consistently, they kept the place in good shape, but I don't want them in there anymore, I'm not going to renew the lease, okay? I'll be like, hey, you know what? At the end of your lease term, you got to go. And in places without these stupid just cause eviction laws or good cause eviction laws, you can do that. That's not an eviction, okay? It is just not continuing the lease. Oh man, one of those topics that it just frustrates me. Okay, so anyway, let's get into the article and see what it says. This article is coming from WUSF News .wusf.usf.edu, and it says experts shine a light on the invisible toll of informal evictions. And yeah, they're calling this lady's situation an informal eviction. It's not. Okay, it's not. Anyway, let's get into the article. When landlords push renters out without using the court in what's called an informal eviction, there's often no way to track it. Nearly 20,000 renters faced eviction in the greater Tampa Bay region in the last year, according to data from the Eviction Lab. But experts say that's not the full picture. Renters also lose their homes through informal evictions, when landlords push them out without using the court. Yeah, that's not an eviction. If you're not going through the court, that's not an eviction, okay? Like, I I know they're trying to use that terminology so that you can garner. They want to garner sympathy for these tenants, right? But if you don't go through the court system and the tenant leaves, or the landlord and the tenant work something out so that they are no longer a tenant, well, that's not an eviction. An eviction requires you to go through the court. They call, oh well, and the impression is that the landlord is out there doing something illegal, like, oh well, they're out there cutting the power, or cutting the water off, or changing the locks on the tenant. And most of what the reality of this is landlords just choosing not to renew the lease on tenants that may be a problem, or maybe have caused issues. That isn't an eviction, okay? That's just not renewing the lease. Breaking point. For Wendy Castro, that day came last October. Her landlord refused to renew her lease, following months of contention that began the day part of her ceiling collapsed. She was renting a one-bedroom apartment with her boyfriend in Old Northeast, a historic neighborhood in St. Petersburg. The management company, Terrier Properties, advertises its prowess on social media for restoring rental properties with a vintage vibe and old school charm. It wasn't much, Castro admits, but she and her boyfriend made it work. That was until the night their ceiling caved in last July. Me and my partner had gone out to dinner and we had come home. We just walked into chaos, Castro said. And, this is a bad situation, okay? I'm not saying that, this lady deserved to have her roof cave in, but things happen, okay? Things have happened with every property that I've owned. Things break, things fall apart, weather occurs, windows have been broken, etc., okay? The landlord's responsibility, we can't make sure that our properties never break, but we can repair them as quickly and efficiently as possible. And in this story, from what I'm reading, that's exactly what the landlord did. But that's not good enough for this tenant. But let me continue. Photos from that night show insulation spilling from the section of the ceiling that had cratered and covering the bedroom in a black brown film. The property manager, Peter Ford, said that the building and the plaster ceiling dated back to the 1940s. There was filth, insulation, random stuff from the roof everywhere, Castro remembered, and our first thought was, oh my God, are the cats okay? Castro was thankful to find Ronnie and Jinx, her Siamese minx and tomcat, cowering under the furniture, unharmed, though the rest of their belongings weren't so lucky, she said. Yeah, bad situation, okay? Roof collapsed on the place, and, basically, all their stuff is covered in dirt, and, they got a giant hole in the ceiling. Cats were okay, no problem. Let the landlord get in there, make the repairs, and your renter's insurance should cover, this sort of damage. You do have renter's insurance, don't you? Huh. Well, let's see what the article says. Because that was the biggest room, the only room in the apartment that was where the majority of our stuff was, Castro said. So we had things like an Xbox there, a desk that was completely damaged, a desk chair, our mattress, which was a very nice mattress. In August, she asked the management company for nearly $4,000 to replace or repair more than a dozen items. As a new renter, Castro admits that she failed to purchase renter's insurance, noting that it wasn't required by the landlord. You screwed up, okay? You didn't purchase renter's insurance. And I'm not saying that it's your fault that all of this happened, right? But wouldn't it have been nice to know that, hey, your insurance covered some of these damages? Because if it wasn't a ceiling collapse, it might have been weather related damage, it might have been a fire, it might have been a burglary, and none of your stuff would have been covered. And you know how cheap renter's insurance is? It is dirt cheap. Even broke people could afford it. I mean, it's about the same as buying a value meal at the local fast food joint once a month. That's how cheap it is. So it's a poor excuse in my mind to say, oh, well, we couldn't afford it, or, we didn't get it. Well, you didn't get it, and now you're facing the consequences. And so you're asking the landlord for this $4,000. And you know what? I don't know if the landlord should give it to you or not, but the landlord did end up making an offer and offering them some money to cover the costs of the damage to their property. So let me continue reading. Ford, the property manager, said the company was amenable to compensation for Castro's property, given that photo evidence of damages and receipts for all belongings were provided. At most, Terrier Properties offered around $1,200 and $50 in laundry credit, which Castro declined. She refused every offer that we put in front of her, Ford said. So if the tenants are obviously going to, oh, we need to replace everything. Well, a lot of that stuff, it's just covered in dirt. It's not destroyed, okay? You can just clean it off. And the stuff that is destroyed, we're going to give you reasonable compensation for it. We're not just going to write you a blank check just because, okay? But that's what these tenants wanted. They wanted the landlord to write them a blank check, or a check for $4,000, which was probably significantly more than the damages that they actually suffered. And the fact that the landlord was offering that much, I mean, it's a good thing. I mean, it sounds to me like this landlord was doing everything they should have been doing, and that the tenant was just trying to get more and more for nothing. Okay. Yeah, it's bad that the ceiling collapsed, but hey, landlord tried to make you whole and you declined. Okay. So let me keep going here. They do have some pictures of the damage. I'll throw them up on the screen. It's not as relevant to the story because yeah, I mean the landlord is admitting that the damage happened. Okay, it's not like the landlord sitting here blaming the tenant for this damage or saying that it isn't their fault. They're taking responsibility. They're offering to clean and repair the place for the tenant and get the place back in livable condition. The tenant just isn't happy with the offer the landlord's making. Email messages between Castro and property management show that the back and forth over compensation went on for months. And as negotiations unraveled, so did the rapport between tenant and landlord. The leasing office issued Castro a notice of non renewal in October, which she credits as retaliation for the unmet financial demands after the ceiling collapsed. And yeah, she's gonna be, oh yeah, the only reason you're not renewing is because you didn't want to have to pay me all that money, right? And no, yeah, that's not the case. And they're gonna cover exactly what the landlord was going through when all this situation was going on. It says Ford disputes this, claiming that his refusal to renew her lease was due to the campaign of terror she imposed on the company, including actions like speaking to the media and writing disparaging remarks on social media and near building property. He points to an instance where Castro spray painted "Terrier is a slumlord" on a discarded mattress by a dumpster. So basically, she's going online talking a bunch of trash. She's going to the media talking a bunch of trash. She's spray painting stuff all over the property, saying that the landlord is a slumlord. She is terrorizing this landlord. Landlord's sitting here trying to pay her money to get her stuff clean, make her whole again, and she's not happy. So, you know what? He's like, you know what? I just don't want to deal with this anymore. You're not a good tenant. You're terrorizing me. You're, making me look bad, even though I am trying to pay you because you want a handout, essentially. What a bunch of garbage. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised one bit because this is the entitlement attitude that so many tenants have. And, this is why I brought this story to light. Okay. So this is not, what they call a informal eviction. This is not renewing the lease with a tenant who doesn't get along with the landlord, and they just should part ways. They should part ways because this is a ridiculous situation and it will only get worse if she had stayed there in the first place. Okay.